You know, there's a meme, and I was quoting it wrong. I thought, you know, a smart guy learns from mistakes, a genius learns from others. Well, when I looked up the meme, it actually said an idiot learns from his mistakes and a genius learns from others. So I had to chew on it a little bit and figure out, you know, hey, what's this guy saying? Well, here's what he's saying. Why learn from your mistakes when you can learn from somebody else's mistakes? Because if you feel that you got to learn from yours, well, we don't want to talk about where that puts you, do we? So in the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to be sharing with you the 7 critical steps that most salespeople make that cost them sales, and that you can make the right adjustments so you can make more sales with more money. Hello, my name is Del Elson. I've been in the field of sales for 46 years and I love it. You know, I've had the pleasure from learning some and working with some of the best sales trainers in the world. Today, I'm not only going to share the 7 fatal mistakes that most salespeople make, but give you some suggestions and solutions so that it can help you start making more sales and hopefully start making more money. You might ask, well, Del, why would you say hopefully making more money? Well, the reason why I make that statement or ask that question is because a lot of people are making sales, but that doesn't mean you're making more money. I mean, I've been told, you know, sometimes it's like eating broth with a fork. I mean, you're doing a lot of selling, but you're not making much money. By the way, I also believe if you're too busy, you're too cheap. You need to be constantly pushing the envelope until you hit that client's resistance point. Trust me, I made those mistakes myself, okay? I mean, I was making a lot of sales, but my bottom line profit, it just wasn't there. And I did the math, and the numbers don't lie. And what I found out was I was working for the landlord, I was working for the power company, I was working to pay taxes, I was working for everyone but me. Does this sound familiar? With that said, I know some of you out there, you're probably going to view this and say, you know what, I'm already doing this, and that's awesome. The good news is by viewing this, it's going to reinforce some things that, you know, you might not even know you're doing, or if you do know, hopefully gives you a great brush up. For the others, you're going to hear some proven techniques and strategies that if you make the slight adjustments right away, you got to take it and apply it, you'll start to make more sales and more money quickly. Now I know there are some skeptics out there, and you know, they say stuff like, well, you don't understand our market, or people here don't have that kind of money. Well, I tried that and you know, it just doesn't work here. You know, I've heard all these excuses and then some. In fact, I've heard them thousands of times. It just cracks me up. I mean, I want to record every single one of my, you know, every time I hear that excuse and play it back for that person and just Well, Jim Rome said, for those who truly want to do something, find a way or make a way. Of course, those who don't, make excuses. Of course, for the last skeptical comment, well, I tried that and it doesn't work, my response is this. Well, you're too late to try and sell me on that. You see, I've been using this for over 46 years, and I've personally trained thousands who are extremely successful using what I'm going to be sharing with you today. You'll never be able to sell me on that. You might be able to sell yourself, which is extremely, you know, dangerous, or you might be able to sell somebody else, but you'll never be able to sell me on that. Of course, the first fatal mistake the typical salesperson makes, and of course I did this too, is I didn't greet or acknowledge my potential clients within 15 or 45 seconds. The reason why this is so extremely important is because we want our potential clients to feel welcome and not ignored. I can't begin to tell you how many times in my 35 years of selling, when I asked the question, you know, hey, have you been anywhere else? Did you like anything that you saw? You know, why didn't you buy it? The number one response was, well, we walked into that other store and we just were ignored. There'd be like 3 or 5 guys around the counter and none of them even acknowledged our existence. What's interesting is that I've been to a lot of open houses where people are selling, you know, $500 to $1 million homes, or actually not selling, and they didn't do it either. Of course, knowing that we're always supposed to assume the sale, I would always respond to that, you know, they didn't acknowledge me, and I would just simply say this, you know, we love those guys. And the people would be taken back, and I go, yeah, because, you know, if they wouldn't have ignored you, you wouldn't be here buying it now, would you? Now, what's interesting about that question is when they agree, yes, that's right, subliminally, they are agreeing that they're going to buy from you now. This is an extremely powerful technique, and you need to recognize it and start using it. Second fatal mistake the typical salesperson makes when they meet their potential client, and it's so simple, but the problem is they're not smiling. You see, when you smile, there's a few things that happens with your potential client. First, they feel good about themselves. Second, it's going to remove the fear factor. And you need to know and understand that fear is going to be the #1 killer of all your sales. The third thing about smiling is it's contagious. Of course, so is a frown. The third fatal mistake that the salesperson makes if they finally greet their potential client is they ask, "Can I help you? Is there anything I can help you find? Do you have any questions?" The reason why this is so fatal is now you just made yourself sound like everyone else, or like the typical salesperson. And unfortunately, most people, when they think about salespeople, they think, this guy just wants to take all my money. Or they're going to try and talk me into something that I don't need or do not want. And then third, they'll just be sold a bill of goods and they won't have no use for it. I found the best way to approach someone is after you acknowledge them and smile at them, let them settle in a little bit, and then walk up to them, I should say, and then just simply say, and this is what I did, is, "Hello, my name is Del. Please feel free to look around. If you have any questions, I'll be right over here." Now, I have to say, this approach that over 90% of all the buyers I approached this way, usually before I took 3 steps to walk away from, said, "Actually, we do have a question." Where when I asked them, "Can I help you find anything? Do you have any questions? Is there anything I can show you?" 99% of the time they would say, "No, we're just looking." Just making this simple adjustment in your approach will give you a huge advantage of everyone else. The fourth fatal mistake the typical salesperson makes, and it ties into the third fatal mistake, or should I say they go in hand together, is when they introduce themselves, they almost never ask for the potential client's name or names. I don't know why salespeople are so afraid to ask for someone's name, and actually it's kind of sad if you really stop and think about it. Of course, the #1 excuse I hear for not doing this is, "I'm not good with names." Henry Ford, one of the richest men ever, he was quoted, "Whether you think you can or you can't, either way you're right." You need to start thinking that you can get good at remembering people's names. Now, what helped me with this is when I was introduced to somebody is, "Hi, my name is Del and your name is?" And they say, "John." I'm not going to call him Johnny. I'm not going to call him Jonathan. I'm going to say his name exactly how they give it to me. And the reason why I do this is because I want them to know that I'm listening to them. And what's interesting about that is when you say their name exactly how they give it to you, that it's the sweetest sound to their ears. By the way, just doing this will give you a 99% tremendous advantage over all your competitors. I guarantee it. Now you need to understand that 80% of all buyers will buy from those who they have rapport with. And using their name and exactly how they give it to you is one of the fastest ways for you to build rapport. The fifth fatal mistake that most people do is they leave out the qualifying process for the client's needs, wants, and desires. And of course, they hardly ever qualify for the money. And of course, if they do, they don't do it the right way. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, the best way to learn how to qualify for your potential client's needs is an acronym which I learned from one of my mentors, Tom Hawkins, and it's NEADS. Of course, the N stands for now. What do you have now? Of course, if they don't have something now, do you have a friend that has something now? Of course, the E stands for enjoy. Of course, they don't want to do without what they enjoy. And I usually try and get, 3 to 5 things out of them that they enjoy. Now, they don't want to lose this. Remember that. Okay, the A is for alter. This is why they're there and what they're looking to buy. They need to make change in their life. So if I could get 3 to 5, alter, questions answer, I'm just loading my gun for the ammunition so when I go to put together my presentation, I'm just nailing it. Now the D is for decision makers. You don't find out who's involved in the decision-making process, then you get hit with things like, well, I got to check with my wife, or I got to check with my partner, I got to check with my boss, I got to check with the president of the company, I got to check with my attorney, and then you lose the sale. The S is for solution. Of course, after we hear what they enjoy, what they want to alter, in our mind, we need to start formulating what is the perfect either product or service that we have. Now, we don't want to jump the gun on this and start showing them what we think is best for them until we find out how much money they have. Now, you need to understand, effective communication is not a one-way conversation, but it's a two-way conversation. By the way, never ever interrupt your potential client or cut them off thinking you know what they're going to say. It's rude and it's irritating. And the more you irritate them, the less likely they are to buy from you. Now, I understand we live in a pretty forgiving society. However, you don't want to do anything on purpose or knowingly that irritates your potential client, because if you do, you're going to lose the sale. The other part of qualifying that the typical salesperson doesn't do is to find out, how much they can afford before they start shooting off, what they believe the person can afford. Now, the reason why is most of the time is because they don't even ask, or if they do ask, they ask, how much did you want to spend? Of course, you're never going to get the right answer out of that. So usually what they do is they just don't do it. And you need to understand that if they don't have the money, they don't have the credit, you're not going to make the sale. Of course, the problem with doing this or not qualifying is, you're so good at selling the product, man, this is the perfect product for you, this is the perfect product for you, and they can't afford it. Eventually, what they're going to do is they're going to walk out of the store and they're going to go home and they're going to let their fingers do the walking, or they're going to shop you on the internet. Now listen, I hear thousands and thousands of salespeople crying because of the internet pricing, and the truth of the matter is they learn how to qualify, they're going to get 4 out of 5 of their clients. Well, Del, what do you mean? 20% of all people just want the cheapest price. 80% want quality and service. Now, are we going to let the 20% that want to shop us on the internet, frustrate us and stop qualifying? Or are we going to start qualifying people so we can get the 80%? So how do we find out how much do they want to invest without sounding like the typical salesperson that says, how much did you want to spend? Well, the absolute best way I found out to accomplish this is to give them 2 choices and make sure we have some wiggle room in those 2 choices. For example, let's say that you're selling a widget and the cost of the widget is $1,000, all right? And you just simply give them 2 choices. Of course, we want to include what they enjoy, what they want to alter, okay? So, for example, and I'm going to simplify it, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, those who enjoy, now I'm going to repeat, a couple things they enjoy, maybe 1 or 2 things they want to alter, usually invest around, $1,200. Now, that price is going to be 20% more than the $1,000 that we want, okay? Then I make the statement. Then we have those clients that, enjoy, and I add a couple more things that they enjoy. And then I add a few more things that they want to alter. Okay? And they usually invest around $1,500. Now I'm going to give them 2 choices. Mr. and Mrs. Jones, where do you believe you feel the most comfortable at as far as investing goes? The $1,200 or the $1,500? Now remain silent. Now, why would I go through this process, you might ask? Okay, number 1, if they answer 12 or 15, okay, you got some wiggle room, and it makes it difficult for them at the end when you try and close the sale, it costs too much. Number 2, if they don't have 12 or 15, they'll usually tell you what they really have, and then based on that information, you put together a presentation. The next thing is, if they do have more money, it gives you an option to upgrade them and get them some better products or better services. And of course, lastly, if they try and get a better price out of you, and you have some wiggle room, you have it to close the sale. Now, if they ask you what's your best price, never give it to them. Always ask this question, are we talking now? Or you could say, well, how much were you thinking? I was taught by one of my mentors, as far as discounting goes, which I'm talking about if we don't have no wiggle room, okay, that discounting is going out of business on the payment plan. Of course, the most highly successful and the highest paid salespeople are those who learn how to qualify. So please learn how to do this and put this in your process. The sixth fatal mistake that most salespeople make is they think selling is telling, and it's not. I'm here to share with you that selling is not telling, it's asking and then listening. Now, I had a lot of people over the years, they tell me, oh yeah, you need to hire this guy, he's a fast talker. I wouldn't hire the guy. What I was looking for was a fast listener. Now, back to our presentation. You need to understand some things about our presentation. Number one, people do not buy features. People, when they invest, they want to buy the advantages or the benefits to help them solve their problems and make their lives better. In fact, I was taught at a young age, I think I was like 18 or 19 when I went to this training, that anytime you mentioned a feature, somebody would yell, "So what?" So you're going to have to learn that after stating a feature, you always want to follow it up with an advantage that your potential client is looking for. So let's talk about Bob for an example. And Bob, he's just burnt out on flying commercial airlines. He's burnt out with, checking in only, an hour, 2 hours before his flight. He's burnt out on, flight delays or missing his flight. And, he wants to buy a jet. So the salesman, he says, "Hey Bob, the greatest thing about this jet is it flies at 698 miles per hour. So what?" Now we're going to talk about the advantage. So I say, well, it flies at 698 miles an hour, which means, Bob, that it's going to save you a whole lot of time and you don't have to deal with early check-ins, of course flight delays, and it'll allow you to become more profitable for you and your company. Now, that right there will make you better than most. However, how many of you would like to learn how to be even better than that? So this is what I learned from my mentor, J. Douglas Edwards. And I call this a selling law. And that law is this: never make a statement or statements without following them with a question. The only reason to make a statement or statements is to prepare the way for the questions. So I put together this little acronym for you, and perhaps you heard of it. It's called FAQ. And no, I'm not talking about frequently asked questions, but what I am talking about is feature for the F, advantage for the A, and Q for the question. So let's say we're selling a home and it's drought tolerant yard, and Mr. Jones, he was tired of dealing with, the maintenance of a yard. Of course, the drought tolerant yard is going to have a couple of advantages, and I'll get into that in a second. So I might lead off my statements followed up with a question. It's like, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, this home features, a drought tolerant yard. So what? Which means, it's going to have a lot less maintenance as your current yard, but at the same time save you money. Now, here comes the question. Now, I know you shared with me one of the critical things as far as making your decision is having a maintenance-free yard. And isn't it going to be a huge advantage for you in your new home that you're not only going to have less maintenance, but at the same time save money? Now, the seventh fatal mistake that the typical salesperson makes is that they don't know when to shut up. You've probably seen this and experienced it yourself. The salesperson just keeps talking and talking, and what's funny is they'll usually talk somebody into doing something, they don't shut up, and then what they do is they talk them right back out of it. Of course, I was taught by my mentor, J. Douglas Edwards, if you heard yourself sell it, you wouldn't buy it either. Now, the best way to become proficient is learning how to ask, listen, and watch your potential client whenever you ask some type of question, and then to make sure to shut up and listen. You already know what you know, and the only way you're going to learn more and find out what they want is by asking the right time of questions and then listening to what they have to say and remain silent at the same time. I was taught by my mentor, J. Douglas Edwards, whoever asks the questions, lead the conversation. I want to encourage you to learn how to ask the right questions so that you can lead your potential client to buy what's in their best interest, and don't try and sell them anything else they don't need. This is selling something that they don't need. This is short-term thinking and not long-term, and this is why most people do not want to become salespeople. In conclusion, if we want to become more effective at selling, and I believe you do, you're going to have to make the right adjustments in these 7 steps. If you make those adjustments, you will become more effective in the field of selling. Remember, number 1, we want to greet and acknowledge our clients within 15 to 45 seconds. 2, smile. It makes them feel good about themselves. A good thing to practice on smiling is every time you walk in front of a mirror, just practice smiling, okay? Number 3, don't be the typical salesperson by asking that typical questions or those typical questions. Can I help you? Is there anything I can help you find? Do you have any questions? Remember, we just want to simply, greet them, smile at them, let them settle in, walk up and say, hey, my name is Dell. If you have any questions, I'll be right over here. Number 4, when you come back to them, always introduce yourself again and then get their names. Remember, using someone's name exactly how they give it to you is the sweetest sound to their ears. And in doing this, this will separate you from 99% of your clients, and it also builds rapport. Remember, 80% of all people who buy from those who they have rapport. Of course, 5, we need to qualify both for their needs, NEADS, and for the money before you put together a presentation, because if you don't, they'll go shop you on the internet, and I don't want to hear you crying about the internet low prices, because to be honest with you, 1 out of 5 of your clients just simply want the cheapest price. Number 6, selling isn't telling, it's asking and then listening. Remember our FAQ, feature advantage questions. Number 7, whoever asks the questions leads the conversation, and whenever you ask a question, remember to remain silent. Well, that wraps up our 7 fatal mistakes that most salespeople make. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to view this tutorial. And if I can help you, or if there's somebody you know that might need help, please do not hesitate to reach out to me at dell@dellhelp.com, or you can call me or text me. That's even better yet, because if I'm in a training, I won't be able to take your call, but if you text me, I will call you back, I promise. And that number is 559-259-2932. My name is Dell Ellis, and I'm passionate about changing lives. Have a great career.